So if you have looked into adopting at all, it's very likely that you have heard this term foster to adopt. And while many people do pursue this path to adoption, I personally believe that it is not the best route to take. So today I'm going to explain to you why I think the concept of foster to adopt can become problematic and a different path to adoption that you could choose instead. Hey, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Katie and I am a mom to 3 awesome kids who we adopted from foster care. And I'm also an adoption consultant and I help families all over the country adopt children from foster care. Okay, wait a second. You're probably thinking, didn't you just say in your intro that we shouldn't foster to adopt? And yet now you're telling me that you have adopted 3 children from foster care and you're telling me you're an adoption consultant who helps people adopt from foster care? The math isn't mathing, right? Math never really maths for me. I'm not a math person. But let me explain. Our path to adopting our kids from foster care was different than a foster to adopt situation. So I'm going to explain how it is different. And I actually want to help you potentially take the same path that we did towards adopting from foster care that is not foster to adopt. But first, let's define what foster to adopt really means. Also, quick side note, I currently am not feeling great. I don't know, I might be coming down with the vid. I'm not sure because a couple family members have gotten it that I was with Thanksgiving. I will be taking a test after this video, but I'm trying to film while I still have a little bit of a voice. But as you can see, I did not take the time to clean like markers off my floor or this table that was left over from a holiday event. So this is real life. Let's just let this be. Let's not pretend, oh, my fall decorations I still haven't put away. This is reality, people. Welcome to my reality. Okay, let's talk about what foster to adopt really means. While some states will use this term differently, the real true meaning when you say foster to adopt that most people will think of is that you are doing foster care with the hopes of being able to adopt one of the children you foster. So what's the problem with this? I mean, we need foster families, right? There's a huge shortage of foster families. So yes, we do need foster parents. That is extremely important. I have had conversations recently with several people in their area just about how few foster parents there really are. And kids in Nevada are sleeping in casinos, which blew my mind. A client I had told me about that recently, which I'm like, at least they have somewhere to sleep, but it's kind of insane that they're sleeping at casinos. I also talked to someone in Ohio in a county where our children are from, and they said they have about 2,000 foster kids and only about 200 foster homes. So obviously that is a huge deal, a big problem going on. So yeah, foster parents are needed. So what's wrong with fostering with the hopes of adopting? Well, it's a little complicated. I think what's important to remember about foster care is that the goal of foster care, at least the primary goal at the beginning, is to reunite children with their biological families whenever possible. I realize there are situations where it will not be the safest or best option for that child to go back to biological parents. However, as the foster parent, we don't get to be the ones to decide those things. And this is the truth. A lot of those kids will go back to their biological parents. While there are really severe situations of abuse and neglect that can happen, sometimes there's a situation where a parent just needs a little bit of extra support, or they were in a bad situation and they're getting out of it, and they will eventually be able to care for their children. And the problem is that if you are fostering, hoping to adopt that child, if that's your number one desire, you can inadvertently get in the way of the reunification process. Because let's be honest, you probably will love these children who come into your home. You will treat them like your own children. You will love them. You will provide for them, and you will build a bond with them. And that's great. That's what you were supposed to do as a foster parent. However, if you're building that bond with the expectation that it could last forever, and you have the hope that it will last forever, well, then how are we supporting reunification for situations where maybe the parents really can work on their case plan and get things together and get their kids back? it's going to be hard for you to even be supportive of the idea if your ultimate hope is that you will be able to have this child who you love stay with you forever. So that's one reason why this can be a little bit problematic. Another reason is just for you as a person. You will likely have several placements, possibly 1 or 2 super long placements, or maybe you'll have many short-term placements before you would ever foster a child that had the ability to be adopted. Now, I know it happens. I've talked to people who fostered and like their first foster placement turned into an adoptive placement. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's impossible. It's not impossible. However, just know that it's not super likely, and it is a big risk you're taking to go into it saying, I really hope I can adopt the first child I foster, because it's not likely to happen. And what I see is that the families who are really interested in adopting but foster instead with the hopes that they will eventually be able to adopt, they get really frustrated with the system. They will often complain about kids being reunited with their parents, and they have a very negative outlook on birth parents in general. And don't get me wrong, I know there are situations where there are some birth parents who just are not capable of caring for their children. I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, we cannot be the ones to fully judge that as the foster parent. So this is where it can be a little bit of a sticky situation and can honestly leave you as the foster to adopt hopeful parent feeling really frustrated and really upset and sad because you didn't go into this hoping that you would foster kids and send them back to their biological families. You went into it hoping that you would foster them, they would not go back to their biological families, and you would be able to adopt them because adoption is what you're truly interested in. And actually, for years and years, that was the only way that I knew of that you could adopt from foster care. It was like you become a foster parent and then you wait and see until you can potentially adopt one of the children. And I remember when I was younger hearing like horror stories of families who they thought they were going to adopt this kid that they were fostering, and then it didn't work out and the kid went back to their biological family. And I remember back then being uneducated about the foster system and the process and the purpose of it, thinking, oh my goodness, that's horrible. Why would they do that to this kind foster adoptive family? And now I look at it and say, oh, that family was not being realistic about the purpose of foster care, which is reunification. And while adoption can happen and does happen, it is not a given. And it shouldn't be, because imagine if one incident happened in your life and your biological kids were taken from you, would you want them to instantly be able to be adopted by whatever family they went to? No, you would want to fight to get those kids back, and you would want to do everything in your power to get your children home with you, right? So we have to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the biological parent, and it does involve some compassion and some ability to see from another perspective. And I actually plan to do another video soon about just birth parents in general and how we have maintained some contact with our children's birth mom. And so that is something that if you're interested in, definitely subscribe, because I would really like to talk about that. It's something I really have a heart for, is maintaining those ties. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see some videos about that topic. Okay, so I told you why I don't personally think you should pursue foster to adopt, but you might be thinking, okay, Katie, well, what do? I want to adopt a child, and there's a huge need in foster care, so I hear. Well, I'm going to give you a few options. Option number 1 is what we did. You could adopt a waiting child from foster care. At any given time in this country, in the United States, there are 100,000 children waiting to be adopted in the foster system. Now, the reality is that a lot of these children are older children, they're parts of sibling groups, they could be teenagers, or they could have some sort of significant special need. But not always. Sometimes these kids are younger, sometimes they are not part of a sibling group. It does happen. And what is going on is that these kids are legally free for adoption. Their parental rights have been terminated. They're just waiting in a foster home temporarily until they can find the right adoptive family. Because believe it or not, there are foster families who just want to foster. They're not looking to adopt. They just want to be a safe place for kids to go in the meantime. And so in our situation, for all three of our kids, they were actually placed in two different homes of older foster parents, so in their 70s and 80s. These foster parents were not looking to adopt at their ages. They were looking to just be a safe place for kids and be kind of a grandparent figure to those children while they were in their home. And the benefits of this are that, first of all, you're meeting a huge need. These kids are waiting for a family. They're waiting for the right match. And second of all, there's a lot of great benefits that come along with this, that if you're kind of like, oh, other types of adoption are really expensive, and maybe that's why you decided to pursue foster to adopt, because it's just not in your budget to be able to adopt domestically or internationally, well, it's okay. You can adopt waiting children. There are government-provided subsidies in most states where they will help you take care of the child, provide for some of their needs. And they often usually will also get health care. So there are tons of benefits, and it really sets you up well to be able to care for these kids. So I always just like to recommend that and let people know that's a thing, because I had no clue it was a thing until I met a friend who had done it. And that's what started me on this whole journey. This is the type of adoption I mostly help people with when it comes to my adoption consultations. So if you're interested in learning more about this, definitely check out my website. I always link it in a pinned comment below. And you can book a consultation with me. I can answer any questions you have about the situation, and I can connect you to agencies and resources in your local area. However, I realize that some people really have it in their minds to adopt an infant. And so the foster to adopt route is often pitched to these people as a way to adopt an infant, because you're much more likely to get a foster care placement of an infant that could maybe turn into adoption, rather than finding an adoptive placement of a baby. That's just not very common or likely. So you basically have two choices if you want to adopt an infant. Option number one is that you could look through the foster system, but in a different way. In a lot of states now, they have what are called safe haven baby boxes or safe surrender. There are these states that have laws where if a mother gives birth and they have not created an adoption plan, and they're like, realize that they cannot care for their child, or they don't want to, they can anonymously drop their baby off at a fire station or a police station, or sometimes like a hospital, things like that. And there are no legal ramifications for them. They can simply drop the child off, be anonymous, and leave. What happens then in most states is that that child goes into the custody of the state, which means if you are a licensed foster adoptive family through your county, you could be on a list of people interested in adopting one of these babies. So definitely Google that. Type in your state and safe haven or safe surrender and see what's available in your area, because that is a very affordable way to adopt an infant. If money is tight and you don't have the immense funds it does take to go through the domestic infant adoption process, which is the next option. The domestic infant adoption process can be very pricey. I know that there's a lot of debate about this and how it's so messed up, but just realize that a lot of a lot of the money that you will be providing during this process is actually going to the birth mom who is choosing you as the parent. So just know it's a little bit of a different situation, but it can cost like $30,000, sometimes less, sometimes more, but that is what I would say is the average I have seen. So that is also an option if you're interested in going that route. So there's actually a fourth option. So far we've talked about adopting a waiting child from foster care, which is what we did. We talked about looking into safe surrender or safe haven to adopt an infant. And we talked about domestic infant adoption program that is not through foster care, but there is another option. The fourth option is that if you feel called to foster, please do it. If you feel like, I just want to be a foster parent for a while, and I just want to be a loving temporary home for these children as they are waiting to be reunified with their parents, then please do that. I am not about pushing people into adoption, but I also just want to make sure that if you're doing foster care, you're doing it understanding the purpose of it and understanding what is most likely to happen. So if you're going to do foster care, you need to kind of release that thought in your mind of, I really hope I can adopt these kids. Obviously, if you foster and a child becomes available for adoption, that's awesome. They can have that continuity to stay with their foster parent. They don't have to do the searching to find another adoptive family. That is great. But I just recommend not going into foster to adopt. Either foster or adopt. That's just my opinion. I know there are a lot of other people who agree with that, but I also know there are people who have done foster to adopt and really feel it was a positive experience. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, I'm not here to tell you exactly what to do. You have to decide what's best for your family. There are states and agencies that do push the foster to adopt route. I don't agree with it, but I know that there are people who do. If you're still really unsure about which path is right for you, or maybe you have a lot of questions about adoption you just want answered, I would love to provide more information for you. So first thing that you can do is subscribe to my channel. That's one of the best ways to support me making this content to help educate and encourage foster and adoptive families. But also I have a really great free resource that you can download that I will also link in the comments below, but it is a quiz all about whether or not you're truly ready to adopt, and it can help give you some clarity in this process to figure out if you're ready to pursue it or not. And also when you download that, you will go on my email list where I will send out tips and information, and I'll send out my videos just in case you miss any, so that you can get all of the information you need for your adoption journey. It is such an honor to walk alongside you in that, and I appreciate you so much for being here. Let's do the secret thing. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, that means you're my favorite. Congratulations, don't tell the others. So I like to ask a secret question at the end. So now that we're at the kind of beginning of the Christmas season, I am one of those people, sorry, who will not listen to Christmas music until Thanksgiving is over. So now we're free to do it. I would love to know in the comments, what is your favorite Christmas or holiday song? I think I have too many to count, but I will say I really love the song White Christmas because I love musicals and I love that musical. So that is my answer. Go ahead and give me your answer in the comments below so I can see who my people are who make it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day, and I will see you next week.